Ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to begin. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin Developing Michigan's Workforce of the Future, hosted by Microsoft. Please welcome the Vice President of U.S. Education at Microsoft, John Fickney.
Thank you, and then it's going to be an interesting introduction because I'm actually not the Vice President of Education. But that's a nice title. Maybe I'd like to have that one day. No, I wouldn't. I love that. Well, my name is John Fickney. I am a Vice President for Microsoft. I run our central region for Microsoft, the partner organization. We call it the sales and partner organization for Microsoft. And I'm responsible for 18 states in the United States. We call it the Central Region. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. And we've had an outstanding day yesterday, and I saw the agenda again today. It looks fantastic. I'm also on the board of the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce with Sandy, and I just think he does a wonderful job, and the agenda today is just as good as yesterday, so it's going to be a great day. And I have the honor and the privilege to kicking off our first speaker today. And I'm excited to introduce this person because I've had the luxury of working with her for the past 11 years. Margot has been a vice president at Microsoft since I've been here on a variety of different assignments. And she actually does carry the title of the head of education for the United States for Microsoft. But she's been on many other great assignments. More importantly, in the introduction for Margot, I wrote a couple notes down. She's done so many great things in her 26 years being in this industry. But more importantly, she is the most passionate person about making a difference that I've ever met in my life. And I wanted to share a few things. She took a leave of absence from Microsoft recently, took a year off, and during that period of time, she spent that focused on raising funding and awareness for Kenya Child Protection and the Education Project, partnering with World Vision. That's not something you normally do when you get a sabbatical. And that's the kind of person that she is. She's also the national co-chair for World Vision. And she's currently a member of the Board of Advisors right now for the Renton Skyway Boys and Girls Club, and she was a past board president, by the way. She is a founding member of SeeYourImpact.com. I got to learn more about that one, SeeYourImpact.com, so I'm excited to hear more about that. And there's a very important award that we give out at Microsoft, and she was a recipient of this back in 2006. She was nominated and awarded the most inspirational woman at Microsoft in 2006. In 2012, she was nominated and awarded for the Anita Borg Women Vision for Social Impact which is another a tremendous accomplishment. I will tell you that I've never met a more passionate person. She lives in Seattle, and she had no problem coming down here. I said, well, it's going to be trains, planes, and automobiles, even boats, and she says, I'm in. She was excited. She was excited to be here. She enjoys backpacking, boating, cycling, scuba diving, skiing, golf, adventure travel, and when it's rainy, and it is often rainy in Seattle, she enjoys taking in the theater and a nice glass of wine. So it's my honor and privilege to introduce you to Margot Day. Thank you for being here, Margot.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for being here.
I have to say that's one of the warmest introductions I think I've gotten in quite some time, and so I really appreciate it so much. And so good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for getting up early. This is an incredibly important topic that we're discussing today, which is all about really how do we help and how do we partner together in developing Michigan's workforce for the economy that you're developing for the future. And it is amazing and delightful to see such a cross-section of people at this conference representing business, government, everything else in between, coming together to say, how do you as a state move everything that you're trying to move forward? I'm delighted to be here because I think every day about the U.S. education system. I'm responsible for both K-12 and higher education. And as John said, I can get pretty passionate about this topic. I was one of those little kids growing up. I loved summer vacation, but it was 2 months too long. To take a break was great, but I was one of these just voracious learners, and as part of just who I was and always wanting to think about what might be possible, I started in the technology field in 1984 when I was about 3. And so, I've seen the power of technology as a tool transform business for years, and the bulk of my career has been centered in the commercial market. But after coming back from Kenya and after seeing the power of education in the tribal communities in Kenya reverse centuries-old practices for girls, like early marriage and other pretty brutal practices, coming back to Microsoft, I was afforded this opportunity to look after and lead the U.S. education team. Because we knew at Microsoft, just like we all know here, that our education system was at the cusp of being transformed, and we're in the midst of that transformation right now. And so what I want to talk today about is STEM and how STEM is going to affect the job creation now and in the future. Take a look a little bit at some statistics that we've got with respect to Michigan and how your education system is actually preparing your students for these STEM-related careers. But just as importantly, I want to broaden the conversation just a little bit and also talk about how we're preparing our students for the modern skills that they also need to have to succeed in their life and their careers. So I'll touch on that. And then I'll also talk about the role that data plays in really providing good insights, if you can do this right, that really help teachers and the entire education system come around students to drive up graduation rates and also to change and enhance the learning that they have. I'll try to do all that in about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A, if that seems like a pretty good use of time. So with that said, let's jump into some of the content here. That's just the basic title slide, so we'll get past that. Great. So Bill Gates and Paul Greenspan had an opportunity to sit down with Computer World in March of this year, and I pulled out a couple of relevant quotes over the next couple of slides just to set the context and to set the topic around how important education is to the nation's economy in the overall future. And so you can see Bill's comment here that in order for us to maintain our relative position in the world, we've got to do a much better job of really enhancing, refining, and driving our education system forward. I'm sure you all have seen the international studies that rank the United States vis-a-vis other nations in the world. They're called the PISA tests, and they've just come out for the previous 3 years. And what we found, unfortunately, in the United States is that we're number 29 now in the area of preparing our students in mathematics, which is a drop from 3 years ago. We're number 22 in science, and we're number 20 in language arts. And so this really is a time where we can come together and make very intelligent and bold decisions, I believe, to partner together to transform and continue to drive forward how we're preparing our kids in the United States for the jobs that are available today. If you take a look at what Mr. Greenspan talked about, with respect to the capital markets, we cannot manage our very complex, highly sophisticated system that we have with what's coming out in high school today, which is very, very true. And then when you also take a look at just the number of jobs that we'll have in the United States that are just technology related, you can see that this statistic based on Georgetown University is by 2020 we'll have almost 7.1 million jobs just focused on technology itself. Now when you start to step back and say, okay, let's talk about STEM for a moment and where the STEM jobs will be and in what areas, and then how at a United States level are we preparing our students through the education system to actually be able to step up and earn the right to have those jobs. You see that there's a disparity in particular in the area of computer science and mathematics, in what kind of, in the students that we're producing with what kind of degrees. And so you can see here the biggest disparity is in the area of computer science and math, where on an annual basis in the United States, we'll produce something like 150,000 jobs that are particularly related in those areas. But as you can tell, we're not producing enough PhDs, masters, or bachelors, or even the basic degrees to even help get these students prepared for the jobs that your businesses today are promoting. If you take a look at this even one step further, this actually takes that same view, but it puts it in aggregate, where 122,000, 150,000 jobs a year, and we're only producing students that are capable with degreed programs to step in and fill the gap in about half of those jobs. Now, as we start to think about what does this look like for the state of Michigan in particular, it's interesting because I'll show you some statistics on where you are, and I'm sure you have this data, in producing STEM-related jobs and the growth in the state that you've seen. But when you think about your education system right now, higher education and the AP courses that lead to these advanced degrees, you can tell that by the year 2018, in STEM all up, the mix of jobs will be 40% technology related. Yet today, when you think about the AP, the advanced placement classes that you have in the K through 12 system in high school in particular, we only have about 4% of your population right now taking the AP courseware that sets them on this path and sets them on this trajectory to take advantage of these open jobs. And the jobs indeed are there and will be there. And so what does this all mean? And you can get the source of the data here, which we pulled the slide from, Tech America Foundation. It's fantastic because when you think about between 2011 and 2012, the state of Michigan actually was number 2 in the nation in overall job growth in the technology sector at 3.8%. If you just take a look at just the aggregate job growth, the number of jobs in that area that grew, you were number 4, which is 6,300 jobs, and there's a lot of other great statistics here, and we certainly will leave these slides for you so you can take a look at it. But we all know that the STEM-related professions and the technology-related professions are very high-paying jobs, and you can see that underscored here as well. And so we have an opportunity to continue to really say, how are we going to help get our students prepared, interested and prepared in these jobs of the future? And as Microsoft, because we're a global technology company and we maintain quite a role overall worldwide, we have at Microsoft a responsibility as a responsible citizen of the United States to come alongside our education system and make investments in the education system to help prepare our students for this 21st century learning and in the area of STEM as well. And so I will touch on these investments that we've announced and are in flight in making that are available to the students and the state of Michigan. And so before I go there though, let's just talk a little bit about what does STEM actually mean in terms of a practical job application. And what does technology-related jobs actually mean in this context? And so you could naturally think, well, sure, Margot, as an employer like Microsoft, you want to have a great pool of technology candidates coming into your doors, engineers, et cetera, to advance forward. And Apple would be the same, Google would be the same, and that's true. But here is the fact, is that today, over 63% of all the jobs in the United States require some sort of technology knowledge, and that number will only go up to 77% over the next 5 to 7 years. And so when you think about that, over 3/4 of the jobs, of all the jobs in the United States relying on technology in some way, shape, or form, the need for STEM goes far beyond just the technology industry. And so what we've included up here are different industries and where technology and the knowledge of technology is so critical in order for the businesses in those industries to really think about how they remain competitive and move overall their business forward to dramatic growth. Just take a look as an example in retail sales. I mean, we all know and we see today how important it is to really understand and analyze, if you're a retailer, what's happening on your stores, in your stores. What inventory is selling well? How are your web properties doing? How long are people staying on your website? Is your website driving traffic into your physical location? Where are you actually being most successful and where are you not? That's just one example in this small industry, if you will, called retail, and there's many, many others where technology becomes a critical, mission-critical skill in order for those businesses or those services to appropriately run. And so I think this is an important thing to get our heads wrapped around. Here's another statistic that I learned recently that I was surprised at, but actually not surprised at when you really think about it. And here it is, that 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. Steep on that one for just a little bit, okay? Now, imagine you're a 4th grader. Imagine you're a 5th grader. Imagine you're an 11th grader. Let's take the 4th grader as an example. You're 10 years old. The world that you live in today, and you don't quite know it yet, is steeped in data. Now, what is that child's world going to be like in 10 years when that child is in college? Yeah? And so I'll get into the proficiencies that the new education standards are teaching, proficiencies like innovative and creative problem solving, that when you begin to really correlate that against the world's data and how awash we are in data and how we need to help equip our students to think about, use technology tools to think about how they handle and make sense of this data, that becomes something that's very, very important overall to our education system. So data is an amazing, it's an amazing thing. Here's the other thing, is that there's a lot of discussion right now about how early should we start thinking about bringing the skill of computer programming into our education system. How early? Yeah. Code.org and Microsoft, we believe the earlier the better. 4th grade, 3rd grade, even 2nd grade in some instances. Why? Because if you start teaching our children how to program, and you do it in such a way where it's interesting to them for that age, especially for the younger ages, you really begin to teach our kids how to think logically. And so that's why there's this really dramatic move and desire and drive forward to also bring in computer skills into our classrooms. Elementary school, middle school, high school. Now, one example of an investment that we've made, we've got some software that we use internally to create games. It's called Kodu. And Kodu is a visual programming language that is designed to help kids or Microsoft develop games. We make that available free of charge to any K through 12 school. Free of charge. Why? Because we know that if you can engage some children in creating a game, now they've become interested actually in learning how to code without even knowing about it. We're also a big supporter behind code.org. And so far, there's been over 36 million students in the United States that have at least stepped up and have taken the challenge to do 1 hour of coding. There are a number of school districts that I'm starting to see across the United States that are actually incorporating code.org into their overall curriculum as early as the 5th grade. And just overall to help kids really learn how to structure their thoughts and produce something that has an interesting outcome. These, whether it's code.org and the tool that they have, whether it's Kodu and what that is, we don't care. What we care about is trying to bring the right tools to help our students really get interested in coding so that they can learn how to think logically. It's no worries at all. It's actually the creation of software programs. So it's the language, it's the programming language. Wow, okay. So, no, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. So if you think about, as you think about the computer that you have today, what's your favorite program that you like to use? Okay, so if you think about, great, email. Email is a perfect example. Yeah, email is a beautiful, beautiful example. Well, how did that email program come to be? Well, you may not, but the businesses in Michigan depend on someone to actually write the lines of code to produce that email program that you use.
I'm not disagreeing, but
yeah.
I drive my automobile. I have no idea what's under the hood.
Yeah.
I don't know if the engine's in the back or the front.
Yeah.
I drive it.
Yeah.
I do very well.
And that's another great example.
Somebody has to know that.
That's correct. And yeah, that's exactly right. So automobiles is another great example. Mercedes-Benz is a good one. It's just the one that I have off the top of my head. Or Ford Motor Company, but the one, yeah, no, I apologize because I'm in Michigan. I didn't pull out the statistics last night, so forgive me. But the one I have off the top of my head is Mercedes. And on board on Mercedes cars now, they have over 16 computers on board, right? Someone has to then write the code to produce the heads-up displays, to produce all those, the dynamic stability control, all those kinds of things that you have. And that's what we're talking about here, is how do we really get our students interested in doing those kinds of things? Because today, there's a ton of jobs, but there's not enough students that are coming out that actually can compete for those jobs, which is why then we're importing talent from offshore into the United States to fill those jobs. So this is all about then how do we get our workforce to be more ready to step up to those kinds of jobs. And there's companies and there's organizations like code.org, there's companies like Microsoft that want to come alongside and aid in that respect. So that's a bit about STEM, but let's broaden this a little bit more, because when you begin to think about our education system and you begin to think about our kids, in many instances, they are learning without us. learning has become almost 24/7 activity for many kids. Just think about how many students you see walking around with their cell phones, searching for things, looking at things, Facebooking, tweeting, listening to things. Learning has gone beyond the classroom. And so what we need to now empower is for a student to be able to learn in an effective way anywhere and any time in the most interesting way possible. Because the means of education of the teacher sitting up in front of the classroom doing a lecture, that dog don't hunt anymore. We've been doing that for years and years and years. And now we have an opportunity to begin to think about how do you bring in collaboration into the classroom? How do you bring in rich interaction into a student's day to make learning far more intuitive and interesting? And so technology and technology tools allow for that. So if you think about the state standards now in education and the modern skills and the proficiencies that also need to be taught in our education system, you can sum it up in these 4 areas. We need students now to become great communicators. Students need to demonstrate proficiency in collaboration. Here's the one I talked about before: innovative and creative problem solving and becoming globally aware. And at Microsoft, we do believe that technology tools can aid in all of these areas. Let me touch on the one first that I talked about before with respect to data and all the amount of data that's out there. So if you think about Microsoft Excel, we all know Microsoft Excel, most of us do anyway. It's a spreadsheet, great spreadsheet, yay. Accountants have been using it for years. But now, what you can do with Excel is you can tap into these ginormous databases that are out there, like the world's oceanographic information, like all the data that's up there about the stars, all the longitudinal census data that has existed since the time immemorial that we've been taking census, et cetera. You can tap into all of those data sources and then use super easy, I can use these things, data visualization tools to map or to show trend lines. Why is that interesting? Why do we want to do that in K through 12? Here's why. Because as part of innovative and creative problem solving, we want to start teaching our students what is the data telling us. Yeah? And so how do you do that? What's an easy way to do that when you're talking about a 3 terabyte database or data sources that add up to some numbers that are bigger than we can comprehend in our minds? Well, now if you can easily use a simple tool like Excel and something called power mapping as an example, or spark lines as another example, that actually visualize and make sense of all the data, the lesson plan can now start to be, what's the data telling you? And you remember that 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. We've got to prepare our kids to be able to really understand and think about what's the data saying. Same thing with our teachers, but I'll show you that in a second. Let me give you another one around collaboration and globally aware. In Irvine, California, there's a teacher, and this teacher has a group of 5th grade students. And he was thinking, how do I, in a more interesting way, teach our students about geography? And so he was at a conference and met some teachers in Mexico. And they said, let's create a game together, and we'll call it Mystery Skype. And what we'll do, and this is what these people are doing now, is we'll get our classrooms together in Irvine, in Mexico, and I think they also are doing this in Japan. And they run a game for the kids. And the kids, via Skype, ask the kids in the other classroom, what is it like where they live? The kids in the other classroom cannot divulge where they live, more what's it like where you live. So as the students begin to interact and learn what is it like where you live, they go back and they search and they take a look at maps and they begin to ascertain if it's dry and you live by an ocean and there's a city that has 25 million people in it, etc. You run a game and the kids compete to see who can come up with the answer first. I never learned geography that way. Did you? No. Skype is free, you guys. And so we can now start really thinking about bringing these interesting tools like Skype. Or here's another one, Link, Microsoft Link. Many of you in business here in the conference, I'm sure, use Microsoft Link. For those of you that don't, we have been using this in the commercial world for years. What it is an online meeting platform that allows you to conduct web conference calls, have an instant message pane running, be able to share desktops and applications, do online whiteboarding. Think about project-based learning. Project-based learning. We all did this in school. We got together as groups. We said, here's our project. We figured out what our project was. We worked as kids on how we were going to do this project, and it usually ended up, in my era, in a construction piece of paper. In the new era, maybe a PowerPoint. Well, now start thinking about collaboration, skilled communication, and being globally aware, and assembling kids that may not be in the same classroom, but instead might be if they might be in Detroit, they might be here, they might be in Lansing, they might be in California. Doesn't matter. Now we can start bringing kids together using a technology tool like Link, which we make available to all students in the United States with with Office 365 free of charge. So you can now start using these technology tools in really interesting and different kind of ways to serve that. Now, when you map up those proficiencies that I showed you before, I wanted to show you this IDC study. We commissioned a study, just in the spirit of total transparency, International Data Corporation, and we asked them to look at all of the open jobs in the United States, and they did for a period of April through September of last year. They produced the results in November, and here's what you see. That for all of the jobs in the United States, the number one skill that employers are looking for is, guess what? Excellent oral and written communication. The number two skill is actually detail-oriented. And so if you start to begin to correlate what you see here, problem-solving skills is up there in the top 5. When you start to correlate this chart against the proficiencies that now the educational standards are teaching, this becomes a marriage made in heaven. And I do believe that we can use these technology tools to fuel our students' ability to demonstrate proficiencies in this area. I will tell you that we were surprised by the number 3 skill, and it's Microsoft Office. And actually, we were further surprised that for all the open jobs in the US that are the high-paying jobs, Microsoft Office was the number 2 required skill. So what we're making available free of charge to the education system for the students is actually the same tool that businesses are wanting kids to learn. And so not only is Microsoft Office available, but I really applaud what you all have done in the supplemental budget session by saying you want to set some money aside to also allow and pay for students to get learning and certifications in these key areas of technology. We have an offering called IT Academy, where we can make available over 1,100 courses that are centered on Microsoft products, including Microsoft Office, that kids can not only learn, but they can become proficient and certified in things like they can be a PowerPoint expert or a Microsoft Office expert. And so we make that all available with this product called IT Academy. And so the state of North Carolina is probably the best practice on this. They today have over 100,000 of their students certified in Microsoft Office. And just like the state of Michigan, they have also said that they want computer science-related courses to be made available for high school credit. They're tapping in and tagging in IT Academy as one way to move that forward because they're really thinking about how do we create and help our students become proficient and be able to compete with certifications for the jobs that are here today. So we like to highlight and talk about that. Real briefly, I want to touch on what we announced with President Obama on February 4th. You know, I said, hey, look, as a technology company, we have a responsibility as well to be able to bring investments to bear to either provide technology free of charge or to lower the cost of technology so that we can more pervasively bring it into the classrooms. And so we made over $1 billion commitment as a company to do these 5 things to help really think about how do we not only bring great technology into the classrooms at an affordable price, but how also do we help teach and train our teachers to bridge into this new world of technology in the classroom. And so here are the 5 areas of investment. We lowered the price of the Windows operating system so that the prices of computers can go down. And I'll touch on a few more of these investments in just a couple of slides. So one of the investments was, okay, how do then actually we help our teachers bridge into this new era of 21st century learning? And so we made a 5-year commitment, $250 million, to bring teacher professional development and make it available free of charge to our nation's education system so that we can help equip our teachers to move forward into the 21st century. Curriculum like, how do you teach with technology in the classroom? Not, how do you teach with Microsoft technology in the classroom? How do you teach with technology in the classroom? What does 21st century learning design actually look like? And then we also have a large complement of technology training that's specific to Microsoft products as well. But we know that teachers and in the classroom, they'll use more than just our technology. So we needed to make sure that we addressed that. That was a $250 million investment. We made a $300 million commitment over a 3-year period of time, and this is on a global basis, to help the world's youth also capitalize and take advantage of the opportunities that the STEM-related professions bring in. And so we're in year 2 of this investment, and I want to highlight just a couple of areas that you might find interesting. The first is in the area of entrepreneurship, because we know that many of our students are already creating businesses on their own. If they're in higher education, just think about Mark Zuckerberg, or think about many of the high school students that you might know that are already thinking about little businesses on the side. And so we do a couple of things. We've got a program called Dream Spark that for the kids that want to have technology-related jobs, that we provide our tools for free. And then if they actually want to create a technology business, we bring alongside consultants and entrepreneurs and VC funding and mentorship to help them get and establish their jobs and move it forward. It's a program called BizSpark. And then we also run every year a competition for our nation's youth on who can come up with the most innovative solutions to either a global issue, global health, global poverty issue, the most interesting game, or the most interesting new technology idea. So those are just a few things that we're doing there. Worldwide, there's been about 100 million youth that have been touched. In the United States, it's about 32 million of our kids. Lastly, let me just touch on data really, really quickly. This is something that I just recently saw when I was in Chicago at a United Way event there with the city of Chicago. This just came out on April 29th. Chicago Public Schools, as you can see in terms of its graduation rates, through the year 2008 was running at a graduation rate of between 57 and 60%. What they did was they said, we need to equip our teachers with data and make that data understandable by and for our teachers. So our teachers then can remediate and intervene in certain students' lives to help them actually do things like submit their homework on time, help them learn, better, et cetera. But they used data to do individualized interventions of students. That started in the year 2009 when their graduation rate was 64%. You can see what it is today, 82%. Data, ladies and gentlemen, when it's in the hands of the right people and it's understandable, can make dramatic changes, as you can see here in Chicago Public Schools and in many other states that's going on as well. And so we have a wealth of data. What we need to do is to bring rich understanding and make that understanding easy. And there's lots of tools out there that are inexpensive or free that can help you do that. And so let me just conclude my remarks by saying we have a big opportunity, and we know that we do, to partner together to really make learning interesting and fun and immersive, to really help our students capitalize and take advantage on this next generation of new jobs that are being created, to help accelerate Michigan's economy into the economy that where you want it to be, an economy that actually has at its core and foundation an awful lot of technology. So with that, let me conclude my remarks and open it up to the floor for any questions that you have.
We get about 15 minutes, Margaret, for questions.
Got it. Yeah, Bruce.
You just came back from Kenya.
I did.
So you have a global perspective. Can you put Michigan on the map? Can you put Michigan on the map from a perspective of the rest of the world in terms of preparedness of students going into the STEM field?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the question was, I've just come back from Kenya, which is true. I was there just a week ago. And so what's happening globally, using Kenya as an example, and then how does that compare to Michigan in particular? And here's what I'll say, is that in the populated centers in Kenya, Nairobi is a good example, Mombasa is another very good example, they have actually spun up, just like we did years ago in Southern California, these technology incubators. And there's buildings, there's programs that are all set up for the entrepreneurs in Kenya today to actually move into and develop careers and jobs around technology. Microsoft also has a very large initiative on the entire continent of Africa. It's called our For Africa initiative, where we are bringing resources to skill the populations in Africa on digital literacy. What I will tell you, once you get out into the tribal lands, which is where I've been doing a lot of my personal work, there's also computer labs that are being put in. So even kids that are 250 miles north of Nairobi in the middle of nowhere have access to technology in the early grades and in the later grades. And here's what they're already finding. And this has only been going on for the last couple of years, is that mathematics skills are going like this because they're using interactive software to make things a lot more interesting for the kids. Their language art comprehension is changing substantially because when you have spelling checkers built into the software, or when you need to grammatically form a correct sentence, they're learning that way. And so we're seeing lots of increases, substantial increases in the country of Kenya, and we're seeing it all over the place. How does Michigan compare? You guys have to step up to that. But what I have seen is a few of the things that I mentioned. One is that you're now offering high school credit for computer science and computer technology degrees. There's been funding, as I understand, that's been passed or looked at to provide dollars for technology certifications. I think that's incredibly positive. What I'd like to see more of, and this is what we're seeing in Kenya, are businesses providing more opportunities for students to have internships, paid internships or even better, in those professions that they're considering. I think that's a needed component, at least in Kenya, and I don't know what the statistics are here in Michigan in that respect. Yes, sir. Hi.
I run an arts organization that's in residence at a STEM-focused
Yep.
school system.
Yep.
and we're part of the STEM to STEAM,
STEAM,
concept.
exactly.
And I noticed all of the jobs that you mentioned had the words design in
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
And the things like collaboration, communication, these are all things that the arts people find teach particularly well.
You bet.
We're struggling in Michigan that arts programs are being eliminated. The vast majority of schools in Detroit don't have music programs or theater programs. Can you talk a little bit about how this overall vision connects with arts and creativity?
Yeah, actually, on that one list where I showed how technology actually can be used in different jobs, one was an example that I have is the arts, actually, because when you begin to really think about just the entertainment industry, whether it's music or whether it's movies and stuff like that, all of that now has become very digital. There's no doubt about it. Many states that I work with and have the opportunity to go visit actually are broadening the definition and their drive to include STEAM, not just STEM, because the arts, to your point, bring in not only this creative thinking and this innovative kind of thinking, but also many of the arts. When you think about music as an example, music is all about logic and mathematics anyway. And so we are seeing, actually, I'm seeing a broadening trend across the U.S. to broaden the discussion to include the arts in that, because the same proficiencies that as you pointed out, that I showed, are very, very applicable in the arts, and the arts, by their very nature, actually require that. Many artists come together, they like to collaborate, they need to communicate, they need to be beyond the physical boundaries of one another. We're seeing that in spades.
The fear is that there's a zero-sum game going on, that to put more money in STEM means taking money away from the arts. You know, is Microsoft looking at ways that it's not just about supporting technology, but supporting the other things that help that innovative thing?
Here's how we think about it, is that we all know that, as an example, technology or STEM-related jobs are the higher-paying jobs. The more higher-paying jobs a state has, the greater tax base overall that it has, which then begins to free up more funds to then focus in this particular area, in the area of arts again. And so what we're thinking about is, how do we really equip students across the world in the knowledge of technology across the board that then could be applied in a variety of different jobs? And then, as you recall, the statistic, 3/4 of the nation's jobs over the next 5 years are going to require technology anyway. And so those jobs will be the better and the higher paying jobs, regardless of whether it's a Microsoft or programming job or a healthcare job or any of these other kind of jobs. That's how we think about it.
Hi, I'm an administrator here in Michigan, and we have AP computer classes and coding and all that. But I think our concern has found that those students who have the interest thrive. How do we get the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to develop that? I really think that we're missing that point, because those who have the math skills just soar. But our kids that don't, that's where the failure rates, getting them engaged early enough, and I think our funding in Michigan is such that getting the computers to the classroom is really critical, and it's become a very difficult part for us here in Michigan, because the funding has been downward trend. So putting money into computers becomes very difficult.
Yeah, I get it. And so part of and your point is right on. It's how do you really stimulate a child's mind to be interested in technology? And that's one of the reasons why I talked a little bit about how we're trying to bring our gaming software, Kodu, to bear. Because it really is targeted at elementary school students, that age group, 4th, 5th grade. I don't know if I've seen it in a 3rd grade context, but 4th, 5th grade. Because whether you're a boy or a girl, you're interested in games. And so if you can bring that creative energy and show through a visual programming language how to assemble a game and then run that game, it starts to become interesting for the child.
Well, I'm in total agreement with that. I think it's more from a funding and how to get the funding.
the technology part.
How to get the funding into the districts so that the
Yep.
lower grades, because we do put a lot of our money into the high schools.
Yeah.
We make sure that they have the AP and that, but we've missed the whole bottom floor. So you've got this inverted pyramid with funding so that it goes up.
I got it. And so one of the things that we're doing, at least, well, let me comment more broadly, and then I can very quickly touch on what Microsoft is doing. More broadly, just as we've seen with technology for years, the value vis-a-vis the price, that the prices continue to drop, and the value and the quality of the device continues to go up. So you don't have to spend, $800 on a touch tablet or, a laptop or something like that. And so part of what our responsibility is we are working really diligently in a couple of areas. One is for the operating system itself. How do we just take the cost out of that thing, right? And for our education customers, provide a basically low cost or no cost operating system to the device manufacturer so that they don't have that burden of the cost in it. So that's something that we can do right away, and that's part of our $1 billion commitment to the president that we made that is happening right now. And so on average, you're seeing between $50 and $100 price delta just for the same device in an education context now as you would in a retail store or something like that. One. Thing two is we're working also with the OEM manufacturers so that they're speccing the componentry that goes into the device in such a way where it's massively cost effective. And so if you can bring in a high quality device, one that has touch, one that has things like digital inking, I didn't touch on that, but I will in a second, but digital inking, touch, being able to type, if you can have high quality devices available at an incredibly affordable cost, then you're able to take those finite dollars and spread them out, more broadly. So we're working a lot on the back end with our OEM partners, with Intel, on the actual specifications of the componentry that go in to get us to that point for education, to say, how do we make the dollar go farther? With respect to digital linking, here's something that's really interesting that I think is an important one to land. When we talk about math and science are cognitive skills, yeah? The act of typing is actually a linguistic skill. It actually lights up the linguistic centers of a child's brain. The act of handwriting, whether it's on paper and pen, or the act of handwriting digitally on a device, actually lights up the cognitive centers of a child's brain. Studies have now shown that in the area of math and science in particular, we can improve a student's outcome of learning in both mathematics and science through the encouragement of handwriting, whether it's digital handwriting or handwriting on a piece of paper. And so, and the improvement goes anywhere from 9 to 38%. 38% happens to be in the lowest performing students, because oftentimes what you find is that their cognitive skills are really, really high, their linguistic skills are not so much. And so if you can actually transform the learning environment from this to actually digitally writing, annotating, and multitasking on a screen, which also lights up the cognitive centers of a child's brain, the learning goes up like that. And so when we begin to think about these high quality devices that you want to bring into education, we think that one of the absolute requirements must be that the device has to be able to digitally ink in some way, shape, or form so that you can get the cognition happening in these critical areas. 5 minutes. Whoever has the mic, you have the mic.
Thank you. I could listen to this all day, but we go
I
back.
can talk about it all day.
We all go back to districts where life is a very practical issue.
Yeah.
What's the perfect way to have the technology department and the curriculum department be symbiotic, be on the same page, be one? Because isn't that how this moves forward?
It does. And actually, I'm seeing that a lot now across the U.S., where I would say 5 years ago, IT and curriculum, never the twain would meet. And now I'm seeing that come together. And in many instances, I guess the art of how you do it, the way that I've seen it done is in a couple of ways. One is at the leadership of the school, actually bringing the key cabinet members of that school together to talk about collectively the goals of the district and how those goals need to be then rendered and shown through the use of some of these technology tools. So if you get people, aligned on the same kind of goals, that does, wonders. When you start, one of the reasons why I showed those proficiencies that I did, communication, collaboration, innovative, creative problem solving, globally aware, is because, as I mentioned, technology actually factors. The productivity tools that you use in a classroom will make a very big difference. And then how those tools are applied make a very big difference. And so the IT teams and the curriculum teams also need to come to an understanding on how teacher professional development is going to be done. The classic way that PD has been done for so many years is bring teachers in, train them, and then send them off to the classroom or use instructional technologists to do that. In business, we've been training our employees for years through the use of technology tools like Link and others. And so I also think that there needs to be a dialogue about how teacher professional development needs to change in that particular school district. And the IT team can actually, I think, alleviate a lot of the fears on what that might look like and how that might get done. Time for one more. Yes, sir. He needs a mic, or do you have the mic?
I'll speak.
You'll speak loudly.
I'll speak up.
Lovely.
Early in your presentation, you talked about how America is slipping, being surpassed by a lot of nations.
Yep.
On the PISA test. What are some of the strategies in terms of the use of technology that the nations that are culturally similar to us, I'm not talking Singapore as much
Yeah.
as Canada.
Yep.
What are they doing in this area that's helping them to surpass us?
Yeah. The parents play a huge role, in the overall outcome for students. And so what a lot of the nations like us look like and what they're doing is that they are using technology to involve the parents more. We can, parent portals are fine to be able to look up, test scores and stuff like that. But if you actually wanted to use technology to actually bring parents into a collaborative discussion, whether it's something like Facebook or Yammer, I would recommend Yammer because you can keep it private, to allow parents to be able to talk with other parents, to be able to have parents talk with teachers in a very private kind of way, to enable and engage that parent overall in how their role in what they need to do with their child in helping stimulate that learning and what their expectations are of their child in terms of outcomes and performance is a huge piece of this overall mix.
Any final comments as we wrap up?
Yeah, this is, I've been in the tech, boy, I've got a bunch of comments. Let me do this. We together have a tremendous opportunity to actually set our students up for success in life and in career if we really think about how do we together collectively seek to transform and continue to evolve our nation's education system. And I think this is one of these precious times that we have, because for 30 years we've been doing kind of the same thing, and we now I think are on the cusp of something really quite important. But it's going to take all of us leaning in to do it. It's going to take teachers, it takes our superintendents, it takes our policymakers, it takes funding, it takes business, It takes parents. We all have to realize that we actually can lean in and make a difference. We'll play our role at Microsoft as wanting to be a great global citizen and a great citizen of the United States. And I am so truly encouraged by this conference and what you all have pulled together here, because everybody is leaning in on this topic. Don't allow stuff to get in our way of moving forward and changing. Cultural change is hard. I've seen it firsthand in Kenya. And as an adult of the United States, I have a personal responsibility to partner together with other adults to really want to make our education system a place where students can thrive, do their best work across all aspects of life, and have an opportunity to compete for the jobs of the future in these great jobs. So thank you for your time. Thank you for attending this conference. Thank you for bringing all that you bring, your intellect, your power, your passion, resources to bear on this, because I do believe that this is solvable, and know that from a Microsoft perspective, we're all in with you on this as well. So that's what I would say. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna be with you anytime that you need me to. Anytime, any day. Anytime, any day. Oh, I'm gonna be with you anytime that you need me to. Anytime, any day. Anytime, any